Good evening and welcome to the third community planning meeting of the Bridging Gowanus community planning process. For those of you that I don't know, I'm City Council Member Brad Lander, and together with Councilmember Levin, Congresswoman Velasquez, Assemblywoman Millman, and Senator Montgomery, we've convened this process together with a lot of community stakeholders. Let me shout out a couple of representatives of those officials are in the room. Dan Wiley from Congresswoman Velasquez's office is here. Mateen, yeah, we could definitely clap for Dan Wiley. I mean, that's a... Mateen Sarsi from Councilmember Levin's office. Thank you, Mateen. And Josh Levin from Comptroller Stringer's office is also here. And it was Josh's birthday earlier this week, so you could wish him happy birthday if you talk to him later. And we also have another special guest who I'll introduce in just a minute. So let me just take a show of hands. How many people in the room have been to one of the prior Bridging Gowanus meetings? And how many are here for your first Bridging Gowanus meeting? All right, great. That's a good mix. It's nice to see so many people that have found it valuable enough to come back, but also great to have some new folks in the room. We've tried to design it in a way so that it builds on the work that's been done, but is also accessible for folks that haven't been here. In just a minute, the Pratt Center for Community Development, who have been our planning consultants, will go through a presentation. I'm sorry, folks, this room really echoes a lot, so let me ask if you need to have conversations, if you can take them out into the hallway, that would be fantastic. We'll go through a presentation that starts with what this process has been so far. We started it almost a year ago now. This is the third meeting of this large kind, and then in between there have been working group and task force meetings of residents and stakeholders along the way, developing a lot of the ideas and shared values here, with the idea that it is worth a try to see if we can bring people together from many different points of view, stakeholder groups, some folks who have lived in the neighborhood a long time, people that have been here less, people who think of themselves as manufacturers, artists, residents, and who approach the ideas as environmentalists, as the whole range of things, people of from public housing advocates, the whole range. To bring people together to see if we could develop some shared ideas, some shared values and principles and planning ideas to think about the future of the Gowanus, recognizing that there's been a lot of change, that there are reasons to try to get out in front of things, and to set the table for a safe, sustainable, vibrant area that really reflects the things that we collectively care about. What I feel very good about so far is that across a set of people with some really different ideas about what should be there. And there really are a lot of things that I think almost everyone shares as values and goals, and then some places where people really disagree about things. We have managed to create a space in this process for people to have dialogue across those differences and find places where people agree, be honest about places where people don't disagree, and have that conversation in some small groups, in some task forces, in some large groups, and really build those ideas. And I'm optimistic that will characterize tonight's meeting as well. We're going to ask some hard questions tonight. We're going to ask questions on which I know people in the room don't all have the same point of view. And I think that's great. I think the whole idea of community planning is not everyone in our community thinks the same thing, and here we'll show you. We are adults enough that we can bring our values and goals and interests to the table and have a dialogue about what they are and be honest with each other. So that's the goal for tonight's, excuse me, Joe.
Councilman Brad Lander, we are sorry to interrupt your meeting, but we first want to say thank you.
Thank you!
Organizing these Bridging Gowanus meetings, they brought together a diverse community who strives to foster a conversation about how we work at Bridging Gowanus. We do not believe that your process is fair and democratic.
We do not believe
Your process is fair and democratic. Never once have we discussed the Lightstone Project and our objectives.
So I'm going to ask you guys, there are 11 people standing up right now. So if you think it's fair and democratic,
Mayor Bill de Blasio, take problem. To pick 150.
Do you guys really think that having 11 people override the rules that everyone else seems to have shows that people are looking? Because I really don't.
And finally, councilmen, after you have given the 10-tile floor sign, the 10-tile floor sign to the Gowanus Alliance, a group well known to be associated with the biggest developers in the city. To the Gowanus Alliance, a group well known to be associated with the biggest developers in the city who oppose the designation of a historic district, who oppose the designation of a historic district. Civilized.
Right, you're not doing the right thing. We've learned there are 150 people here who came to have a meeting, and if you think that you, because you are more self-righteous and have a meeting, you're willing to begin here, then you stand up and speak on the right meeting, you're going to talk the right thing. So that's why I guess that's the end of the meeting, because this is not the meeting. I think we're going to not be able to have the meeting. A definite process to cover 11 people take over the whole community.
So if we can't do it, it's not up to you. If you're not going to let the meeting proceed, then we won't have the meeting. Should we give him 30 seconds? Well, I'm going to put it to a vote of the group. This is how we do things more democratically, is not that loud people. I'm going to ask the... You are taking over. I'm going to ask the folks in the room whether they would like to give you 30 seconds or not, or we can end the meeting. Those are the two choices. All right, we're done. We're done. We'll end the meeting. That's what you've achieved, is preventing the community from having a planning session. So, no, excuse me. I am going to ask the group whether you can have 30 seconds or we're going to end the meeting.
Okay, ask them.
So,
Ask them.
so,
Because they will not let us on it.
hang on. Let's hang on a minute. We have three choices here. All right? We could just end the meeting. All right? We've tried really hard.
I'm gonna go.
So, Joe, you are not. This is obnoxious. So, who agrees that this is obnoxious? All right. Now, I will ask people for what one of three things they'd like to do. All right? We invited people to a community planning meeting. So,
If you want to hear me, just raise your hand. Please just raise your hand. I see hands.
all right. And if you'd like not to hear him, please raise your hand.
Okay.
It's pretty clear, so I'd ask you to sit down. We're glad to count. I'm glad to count. If you'd like to listen further to what these people have to say right now, please raise your hand.
You need the power. You need the power to speak.
Please raise your hand. We're going to count the votes. Please raise your hand if you'd like Joe to have his time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. If you would like us to move forward with the meeting as we planned to have it tonight, please raise your hands. It's clearly more than 18 people.
On July 9th, we're going to have a real democratic meeting at the Green Building at 7 o'clock. Everyone, including Brad Lamb,
I encourage people to go.
is invited so that we can all sit down and talk about it without being controlled and being told where to sit, what group to be in, which Democrat committee we're on. How about we all discuss what we really think?
Joe, you were not given 30 seconds, so please go. You can invite people to your meeting. There was a vote taken, and you're the...
I want people to know that you are not taking care of us well enough. Do a better job.
Honestly, what I'm trying to do is invite people to a conversation, and the people that we invited said they'd like to proceed with the process as we had it. So we're going to go ahead and do that. As I was saying, I'm very proud so far about how we've made space for people with very different points of view to come together and raise their opinions. Mostly we tried to do that by offering people spaces in small group conversations where they could listen to their neighbors and be part of conversations. I'm thrilled that people felt empowered to bring their community theater here as well, and I would encourage people to go on July 9th if you'd like to hear more. So if you'd like to be part of that, then I encourage you to join these 11 people on the 9th of July. Excuse me, these 20 people. So, for now, I'd love if we could move forward with the planning meeting that the rest of you all turned out to. We've got a lot of people here, and I think it's a really diverse group. And I still think it's people who have widely different opinions on how much development there should be, on what it should look like, on what it should include, and where it should go. Those are hard conversations. We don't all think the same thing. And the right way to try to do it is bring people together across lines of difference and let them talk to each other. And it's not one person's idea, my idea, or anybody else's in the room that will dictate what will happen here. We're going to do our best across some contentious issues to have real honest conversations with each other. That's what we've tried to do so far. I'm not familiar with a more transparent and inclusive community planning process than this one in the city of New York in recent years, and I'm glad that you're here to participate in it. So, in just a minute, we're going to ask Pratt to go through where the process has gotten us so far and the really challenging exercise that we're going to ask people to engage in tonight. Before we do that, we do have a special guest with us who I just want to acknowledge and welcome, and that is the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection, Emily Lloyd. Commissioner Lloyd came out last night to the CAG meeting, the Community Advisory Group for Superfund, to talk about the investments and the work that DEP is doing in response to the EPA's Superfund order and cleanup. Answered a lot of questions there, and I know she will be a dialogue partner in the future in this community as we move forward on the cleanup effort. So I want to thank her for coming out tonight. And without further ado, I want to turn it over to Paula Crespo from the Pratt Center to kick us off.
Thanks, Brad. So just to reiterate a bit, the purpose of this opening presentation is to kind of get everyone on the same page regarding where we've been and what we've done over the last 10 months, and also to set the stage for the interactive exercise that we're going to ask you to engage in the second half of this meeting tonight. So again, why does it make sense to be even engaging in this at this point in time, to engage in this current planning process? Well, one reason, of course, is the Superfund record of decision that came last fall. It sets the stage for a comprehensive cleanup of the canal, as we all know, and that obviously is important for affecting and determining the future of the neighborhood. Also, of course, a year and a half ago, we had Hurricane Sandy, and she was such a reminder of climate change and its impacts and its very strong impacts in this local area. And then finally, of course, we have this newish mayoral administration, and it seems like an opportune time to influence them in their thinking about what the future of Gowanus should look like. So again, Gowanus has been extensively planned for and studied over the years, and this process does not attempt to reiterate that. Rather, it strives to build on all that previous good work. So the goal, again, the overall goal of this process is to engage in a broad, inclusive process to develop a comprehensive framework for infrastructure and land use regulations that are needed for a safe, vibrant Gowanus into the future. This slide shows the timeline of the process. We are, of course, right here in June at the third of three large community meetings. I try to put on this slide a sense of how many people have been participating in the different aspects of what we've been doing so far. And of course, we do have a website, Bridging Gowanus, and that has been, online this whole time and will continue to be a forum for people to weigh in. Brad referred to this set of shared values that we've kind of established throughout the last several months. When we looked at the feedback that we received early on in this process, we heard certain themes kind of over and over again. So it became evident that a set of shared values was beginning to emerge. And many of you recall that we did present these at the first public meeting back in December. We gave you guys a chance to review them and comment on them. And after slightly refining them based on that feedback, we ended up with what you see here. And these really serve as the guiding principles for the process and, of course, for the framework that will be the outcome of this process. So to quickly review, The first one is to improve the infrastructure, and we mean that in a very broad sense, social, cultural, and environmental. And we really heard so many times that this infrastructure issue is fundamental, regardless of whether there's future growth in Gowanus. We also heard that it's a key value to preserve and strengthen the mixed-use character of the area. People really like the current mix that exists here. There are different types of manufacturing, artist workspace, retail, housing, etc. So again, that mix of different types of land uses was really valued by a lot of people. Preserving and creating affordable housing is another strong value. People want to keep the affordable housing that exists here and create new units of affordable housing. Community amenities and the need for more of them was also a shared value. This refers to things like schools, parks and open space, and space for community facilities. People also valued keeping the canal as an open body of water and making it more publicly accessible than it currently is. Also, many people thought it was important to preserve and expand the local business community. There are a lot of thriving businesses here, and any future plan for Gowanus should not only accommodate them, but give them chances to expand and offer opportunities for new businesses to locate here. Also, there are a lot of environmental and remediation initiatives that are, coming into the neighborhood, and people thought it was important that these initiatives should provide quality jobs and have meaningful connections to local residents so they can access these jobs that come online. And finally, historic preservation is a key value. And so therefore, preserving iconic buildings, represents our last shared value. So after establishing these shared values kind of early on in the process, we created working groups because we thought it would be important to have an opportunity for all of you to have space outside of a big public meeting to kind of dig deeper on these issues and start to brainstorm different ideas and programs and policies that would be needed to achieve and meet these shared values. So 4 groups met 2 times each, I think it was back in January, and they each of the 4 groups generated a rich and long list of innovative ideas. We're considering all of these ideas for the final framework plan, but we took a representative set of them and created kind of a planning expo of planning ideas at the last public meeting here. And I will share those with you briefly on the next slide. I'll run through these quickly because this was kind of the theme of the last meeting. So they are, there was a lot of support for a hydrology study, a coordinated cleanup that also is connected to green jobs, which I just referred to. The idea of a Gowanus greenscape, which is a network of green paths and green spaces for pedestrians, and also to create new little nodes and homes for public art and beautification. Reinstating the B71 bus was another of the ideas we included in the Planning Expo. So were super schools, which refers to the notion of having a public school that really operates as a community center in addition to, the 8 to 3 schedule of educating our kids. So the idea is that it would be open in the evenings and on the weekends for a variety of community uses. Dedicated art centers were another idea that that we showed in the Planning Expo, and this is for art production and performance spaces, permanent spaces for such activities. Also mixed-use buildings as a way of combining light industrial uses with other uses in the same building. The Gowanus Special Manufacturing District connotes a notion of a strengthened industrial zone where industrial jobs and industrial businesses are the highest priority of such an area. And finally, the planning exposition showed a few strategies for both preserving and creating affordable housing. So this spring, we added a kind of educational or collective learning component to the building Gowanus, bridging Gowanus process. We thought that given the broad range of topics that we're trying to grapple with here, and the fact that a lot of them are kind of complex and wonky, we thought it would be a good idea to demystify some of these issues. So the Fifth Avenue Committee and the Center for Urban Pedagogy, they really stepped up to the plate and helped us plan content and organize and facilitate these 4 workshops. So I'd like to give a quick shout out to both Fifth Avenue Committee and Center for Urban Pedagogy for their leadership role in this. So on April 10th, Center for Urban Pedagogy used their What is Affordable Housing toolkit to break down a lot of affordable housing policy and programs into easier to understand visuals. The Fifth Avenue Committee also presented examples of different affordable housing developments that already exist in Gowanus. On the 23rd of April, we held a Gowanus environmental cleanup workshop, and this really provided an overview of the different cleanup processes that are already underway or that will soon be underway in Gowanus, and that are sponsored by city, state, and federal levels of government. The participants made use of the Center for Urban Pedagogy's Sewer in a Suitcase learning tool, and this, I guess, demonstrates the issue of combined sewer overflow. And participants also got to hear directly from staff from the EPA and the City Department of Environmental Preservation. The third workshop was an understanding zoning workshop. The What is Zoning toolkit was presented, and it helped to break down the concepts that make up zoning, such as density, bulk, and rezoning. And Fifth Avenue Committee also discussed how the Fourth Avenue rezoning nearby affected affordable housing. And finally, just a couple weeks back, I think on June 2nd, there was an urban design and historic preservation workshop. And again, Center for Urban Pedagogy led an activity to help people consider how different design elements can affect their experience in a neighborhood, and also what architectural and design elements are unique to buildings here in Gowanus. Also, my colleague Vicki Weiner of the Pratt Center presented an overview of different historic preservation strategies that different groups have suggested over the years. So now we arrive to our current point in time. So at the last public meeting in March, we asked people to consider which types of broad land uses should be encouraged in which areas of Gowanus. So they essentially considered which areas might be appropriate for introducing new residential uses, which areas should remain solidly industrial, and which areas might be good for stable, balanced mixed use. So for the area that is currently designated as an IBZ, or an industrial business zone, which is shown on this map in purple, we heard a lot of enthusiasm for keeping it solidly industrial. And this includes adding some density for new manufacturing uses. It also includes the notion of restricting encroaching uses, such as big box stores and nightclubs and large office buildings. People also voice support for having more public support for existing businesses and for workforce development. And finally, increasing access to the Gowanus Canal in this area via green space was something that people were really in support of. And for the area here that is seen in orange, we did hear a lot of support for a genuine, balanced mixed use that we've referred to before, that would include mandates for compatible light manufacturing and affordable housing. It also includes, people voiced their support for having vertical mixed use, in other words, mixed use buildings, and some residential development. It wasn't. There were about 150 people, so, you know, Oh, this came out of the, this came out of the exercise that we did at the last meeting in this room in March. No, it was like it was part of this large meeting. So this is the third meeting, and this came out of the second meeting, the second large community meeting. So I'm basically at the end of the presentation. But I think at this point, I'd just like to quickly review what the potential risks of not doing anything are. And also, you know, why this process is so important, and that essentially leaving the neighborhood as it is and not creating new land use frameworks and new policies or strengthening the ones we have is likely to result in a lot of problematic trends, especially if the local real estate market remains strong. So several of them are listed here, and they include, you know, the further incursion of these encroaching uses that I've referred to a couple of times, including hotels and big box stores. And the thing is, these types of uses are currently allowed in manufacturing zones under our current manufacturing zoning. Could also lead to the loss of manufacturing uses and local good jobs, further displacement of existing residents and artists, incongruent development, and also a lot of missed opportunities to get things in the neighborhood that really reflect our shared values.
I'm sorry. I'm going to say something. If you took questions from the floor, and I'm going to say, this is my house, White Wolf Gardens, this is where we live, and we're going to treat our people with respect. If you took a question from the floor, don't then change your mind and decide that you're going to do something different. She has her hand up. I want her to ask her question. Thank you, Charlie.
My question is to you. I'm going to come out to the front. My name is Joanne Brown, and I'm the vice president over here at Warren Street. And I'm very active in the committee, but my question to you and to the whole committee here, I hear what you're telling me about the Gowanus Canal, but then if you want to start building at this here canal here, you're going to be digging up a whole lot of black tar, old stuff that been settled down there. But then when you start digging, you're going to start making a whole lot of flooding going on. We already have a whole lot of flooding going on right now in these developments here. So my question is, well, when you start developing all out these developers that's here, y'all gonna be digging and then making all these here new low income homes or what have you. Okay, I'm all for it. But then can you please, you know what I'm saying, come over here and then donate some of that stuff to these here low income houses right here, the projects, as I'm gonna say, you say NYCHA, well, we are NYCHA. You got a whole warrant, White Wolf and Gowanus. So see, you're going across Gowanus, right? So, or you digging up and all this stuff. So I need you to donate some of that funds and to helping us to making all across, rather from Gowanus all the way across here to help us to get all this here plastering and all this here backing up some raw sewage coming into people's apartment that's right over here. You hear what I'm saying to you?
So I'm gonna jump into a very brief explanation of tonight's activity, so I can, stop talking and turn it over to you guys. As always, we've assembled a small army of facilitators and note takers who are at your table. So for tonight, we're going to really be building off of the exercise from meeting 2 that I described a few slides back. You will have a chance to consider with more specificity and with more detail what kinds of uses could really work in a compatible, stable, mixed-use zone. And then in the second part of the activity, you will also have a chance to weigh in on your feelings about scale and density of new buildings, and to explore the relationship between density and scale of new buildings and neighborhood amenities, such as affordable housing, new spaces for artists and makers, and green space. So you'll do this by pondering 3 different scenarios for the future of Gowanus, choosing your preference, each of you individually, you don't have to come to a consensus at your table, and fleshing out your preferred scenario. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our facilitators at the tables.
Thank you, everybody. Excellent. Quite an evening. Let's have a round of applause for our hosts, Wyckoff Gardens. For making us feel most welcome and for creating a truly public space where we could have this dialogue. So we're going to move into a report back, but first I want to just call up again Councilmember Lander. Oh, at the end, sorry. Okay, we'll do the report back first. Fantastic. So this is how we're going to do it, because we have about 10 minutes for this portion, right? There are 3 scenarios, right, that were choices. What we're going to do is hear from 3 people each who chose each one. So we're going to hear from folks who chose scenario 1, folks who chose scenario 2, folks who chose scenario 3. But because that's 9 people, and we only have 10 minutes, we're going to be strict about keeping your remarks to no more than a minute. So I ask that for folks that are going to come up and do this, that you be respectful of that. It's great that you have the opportunity to share, and it is indeed being recorded. So I'm going to ask you to actually come up here and use the microphone, but I'm going to keep an eye on the time and ask you to respect that. Does that sound good, folks? Yay! Okay, fantastic. So, I would like to know who would like to come up and in 1 minute explain why you chose scenario 1 in the second exercise. Yes.
Can we see a show of hands in the room of 1, 2, 3?
Okay, sure. So, to see who's in the universe of who can go for these coveted 3 slots, how many people chose scenario 1? Okay, so we might have to fill that in with some folks. We've got 1 person for scenario 1. How many folks chose scenario 2? You knew where I was going with it. Okay. I'm not sure what number that is, and I'm not going to try to guesstimate it, so everybody just eyeball it. All right? And how many folks chose scenario 3? Is there anybody that just wouldn't choose a scenario? Okay, so there were a few people. I want to acknowledge you. Excellent. Right, sure. So just to amplify that, because it wasn't on the mic, the question was, can we ask how many people felt like they were being led by the notes, that the exercise was very confining, and that it didn't allow them to express the full complex range of what they wanted to see for the future of Gowanus? I think that would probably be everybody, because it is in fact a conceptual, theoretical exercise that is supposed to get at certain attitudes and feelings, but fair enough. These exercises are indeed constraining, and that's part of the process that, in our limited way, we've been able to put together. So let's hear, since we had someone for scenario 1, let's have them come up and explain why they chose it, if that would be all right. For 1 minute, and give him a round of applause, because he is a true outlier. And I'm just going to take out my phone and keep an eye on the time.
There you go. Hi, everybody. My name is Dave Powell. I'm the Director of Organizing and Advocacy at Fifth Avenue Committee. And about 5 to 8 years ago, I was a tenant organizer in the area. Around the time when we were speaking about the Gowanus rezoning. Okay. Anyway, but enough about me. I sort of, I didn't realize I would be the only one choosing that scenario, but I realized it was a little controversial. I chose it because I feel that none of the scenarios spoke specifically to the concern that our unit has for existing residential tenants and the pressures that are going to be brought to bear on those tenants, both rent stabilized and so-called free market tenants, if residential development is allowed in this area. Part of what has kept prices low in the area is the fact that there is manufacturing zoning on either side, in Carroll Gardens and Park Slope. There's tremendous pressure on existing low-income and low-rent tenants, and so while I didn't think the current scenario is absolutely not ideal, it's not sustainable. We need to clean up the environmental profile of this neighborhood. We need to control. We need to control some of the out-of-control development that's happening by variance. I'm not in favor of that either. However, only because I saw nothing explicitly about protecting existing tenants did I think the current scenario was preferable to the other two. But I can be convinced if there are other things added to the scenario, and I look forward to continuing that conversation with you all.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Dave. And so just to prepare other folks, because I wasn't obvious, when you're hitting 1 minute, I'll do that nice little wrap sign, and then I will get close to you just like I did to Dave, and that's your wrap-up cue. Okay, so now, scenario number 2. Let me see a show of hands for people who chose scenario number 2. You right back there, ma'am, please come up, yes, and approach the microphone to explain scenario 2. I know folks are going to do it anyway, but you can also comment on the first exercise in your minute, but this is how we're doing it. Please go ahead.
So I have to admit that I chose an altered scenario 2. Mine reads, a neighborhood with a balanced mixed-use zone that has low-rise market rate residential units and preservation of existing manufacturing uses at existing heights and appropriate new manufacturing uses. It includes a new school and a publicly accessible canal. Okay, so then in terms of adding floors, even though I selected 2, I would agree to add 2 floors for either new parks, artist spaces, or for low-income affordable housing, which was not one of the options that was listed. But a maximum of 2 stories added for no matter what of those. The height of the maximum height of the building that I created would be 8 to 9 stories. New density, I would not allow anywhere, nowhere, nothing higher than 8 stories with a setback 9th. Most buildings should be 6 stories with a setback 7th. Why? Because I think this is livable. It's the best opportunity to have growth welcomed and to integrate the new growth into the community at large the way it is. I think building near the water is very risky. I think we need to know that. In terms of urban design, red brick, flat roofs for solar panels, landscaping or other interest at street level, street end access to the canal.
Thank you so much. Let's give everybody a round of applause that has the courage to come up here and express themselves. Thank you very much. Okay, now, scenario 3. Please approach the microphone. And so is this gentleman's. So here we go.
Is there time for 2 people to speak?
We're doing more than one for each scenario. So yeah.
Okay. My name is Stephen, and I too felt that scenario 3 was a bit tricky because of all these nice things to have that added floors on buildings, and all of a sudden we were faced with a neighborhood of 12 and 15-story buildings. So I did favor new uses. I favored increased density, but as well-designed density and mixed use. And I really advocate a new zoning model that actually tries to work block by block, so that a block might contain a building of 12 stories or more, but that not every building should be allowed that there should be a premium on preserving historical buildings, but not every building. And that the design process has to be looking at the entire neighborhood, how one block relates to the next. You do not need, a pre-kindergarten seats in every block, but you may, have reason for some large buildings. So that was basically it. Certainly keeping taller buildings away from the waterfront. I thought to keep them away from actual busy streets. 4th Avenue threatens to be a canyon. That's the absolute bottom line, that there should be no creation of that. But multiple heights, looking at square blocks as mixed in and of themselves and how they relate to one another.
Thank you. Can we get a round of applause, please? Okay, so now we would be back to number 1 again, but I think that we just had one per. Oh, do we have a number 1 back there? Sorry? I can't hear you. One that's not on the list. Yeah, so that's actually where I was going. Since we only had 1, we should choose from the group of people who would not choose. So can I again see a show of hands? There was quite a few before of folks that would be willing to speak that they would not choose one solution. Well, since you raised it, ma'am with the black frock, please approach the microphone and explain your choice. Yes. Welcome.
All right. Okay. There you go. So I was frustrated because actually, to me, the best way we can preserve the things I care about most in my neighborhood, Gowanus, especially in this second zoned area, is to actually make it manufacturing and industrial use, not mixed use, and to grandfather in the residential as it is, because that would protect the housing that we know it, and that's affordable housing currently. If we took out the big box stores and we took out the hotel usage, we took out actually a lot of the amenities usage on our M1 sheet, including services, we would actually have a neighborhood that looks just like it does right now. My biggest concern about any, and I say this with absolute sadness because I'm a huge affordable housing fan, but we have a historic industrial zone that goes all the way to the end of both of these neighborhoods, and we have a right to actually also ask that it stay that way. And we cannot fight those residential developers. The minute there's incursion with housing, we're going to start to lose all those purple spaces. And I hate to be cynical. I want to be super we can do it. But I also feel like as a backup plan, I would like to put forth the idea that could be zoned manufacturing only with a grandfathered in for residential, protection of the jobs that currently exist, protection of the homeowners that currently exist, and the best use for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Lots of important ideas in the room this evening. Let's keep moving with 2 more people. We are going to do scenario 2, the scenario 2 crowd. You got it. You cornered the market, sir. Welcome.
I don't know that I have that much to add to the scenario 2 concept, except my choice was in part based on my reservations about the existing affordable housing programs in New York City. I personally don't believe that they're either adequate or fair. I don't think, when we watched at the time Councilman de Blasio approve in front of City Council the then Toll Brothers project, the justification was affordability, but at the time, Councilman de Blasio would not demand that the affordability be on site. So, one of the big loopholes in affordability is that the housing does not always have to be on site and can be within a 5-mile radius. So I see a Gowanus that is more of a filling in the blanks between Carroll Gardens and Park Slope, and not a Gowanus that is traded to developers for 15-story height. And in part, but I think we all do have to work together to find a way where the affordable model can be changed and applied to the development that is brought to the canal.
All right, round of applause. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's not easy coming up here and trying to explain complicated things and why you feel that way and what's the future you want for your neighborhood. So with that, I will ask who is the last lucky person who's going to get to do that. Who chose scenario 3 and did not have an opportunity to express themselves in front of the room already this evening? Can I see a show of hands? Who chose scenario 3? Ma'am, did you choose scenario 3? Sure. Is that your sheet? Did you hand it in? Oh, but it's not filled out.
I put the filled out one there. Are you going to patronize me any further? You're going to let me have my 2 minutes?
I think you had several minutes. I would genuinely like to hear somebody who in good conscience wants to speak about scenario 3 and the benefits that it can bring. No. I understand what it is. No. If there is nobody who wishes to speak to that point, if there is not one person in this room who would like to speak to it, I will happily afford you the same rules that everyone else was afforded.
Okay.
Please try to stick to the topic.
I will stick on top.
Of why scenario 3 is your preferred scenario.
Okay, thank you. I will be brief, so please, shh. Okay. Scenario 3 is my favorite scenario, and that is because it is the most leading question out of the 3 that you've placed before me. The first scenario, a neighborhood with more hotels, blah, 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 unplanned zoning, that is a leading question. You put all of the negative things first, and then you lead with no zoning changes, and then you would get a new school, but nothing else. Meanwhile, for scenario 3, you gave 9 different options about adding floors and adding all these cool things like a new maker space and a new artist space and a new park and an open space. We can have all of these things without changing the zoning. We can actually do scenario 1 and save Gowanus' character the way it is without asking leading questions like, do you sure you want a neighborhood with more hotels, big box stores, nightlife, unplanned building density, and as a result of zoning variance requests? We should stop doing the zoning variances, and maybe we won't have a problem with that. Maybe city planning should stop doing the zoning variances that allow the 12-story light still building to exist. Maybe we should stop messing around with people's heads and ask them clear questions instead of saying what you guys said. So in the end, I choose scenario 3 because out of all of them, it makes you think that you're choosing something the most, but actually you're not choosing a thing. Thank you. Favorite question?
Thank you so much for your commentary. This is excellent to see all of the ways that people respond. Would someone like to hear, would folks in the room, since I said we were going to do 9 and we did 9, would anyone like to hear another take on scenario 3? If so, a round of applause. All right. I'll allow it, but this is really the last one, so cut it out. Here's the microphone, same rules.
Quick. We wanted the B71 bus. We had to cancel it because not enough people were there to justify its cost. One of the issues is if we want good quality transit, we need to densify around our transit nodes. That means we need high density around the Smith and 9th Street subway station. So that's one of the reasons I supported rational high density around 5 minutes of the subway stations. The other reason is, as a member of the Gowanus Dredgers, I want vested interests to be right next to the canal. People looking at the water and using the water will protect that water. So that is another reason I supported densification and higher densities around the waterfront. That does not mean we should not have a clear environmental agenda and protection of the industry, but they are rational arguments for densifying around the canal. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you very much most sincerely to everybody with the courage to approach the room and speak. So, you can only imagine the incredible tasks that the planners at Pratt Center have in front of them to take all of this spirited, opinionated thinking about what not only the future of Gowanus should be, which may still be a little different in different people's eyes, but importantly, how, not just how we hope it could be transformed into that, but what are the mechanisms that are real, that are based in how the city works currently, and in how we can push the city to do better in its thinking about land use and its thinking about programmatic work. That's the challenge before us. It's going to take us a while. We are going to return in the fall with our ideas about this to share with you at another public forum. Okay, so I am sensing that additional comments would like to be given to us. Luckily, the Bridging Gowanus website has an open comment page, and our information is on this slide at the end, right? All summer long, we are accepting ongoing comment in written form, and if you can catch us on the phone, God bless you, we're busy people. But this is how you can give input over the summer if you feel like you didn't get a chance to write it down, if you have another thought that occurred to you, if there's something else that you want to express. Again, let's give a huge round of applause to Wyckoff Gardens and for everybody's participation. Every single person here is essential to this process, and we thank you for it. Have a wonderful evening. Staff from the Pratt Center are available if you would like to chat us up now. Chat me up.
So are you going to keep all of the source material? Everything?
Hand in your papers if you didn't. We want the papers.
I'm just thinking, there are some skeptics. My wife is one of them.